Hey there, all you ghouls and goblins. Radio 85.9 proudly presents Horror Zoid with your hosts, Stevie Scares and Natalie Nightmare, talking all things horror from the 80s, 90s, and today. Today's episode is brought to you by the M. Night Nightlight. The twist is, it actually works pretty well. M. Night Nightlight, get it today. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Horror Zoid. I'm Stevie Scares.
And I'm Natalie Nightmare.
And Natalie Nightmare, I have a question for you.
What's that, Steve?
Would you settle for PG-13?
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Well, that's good, because that's what we're talking about today. We're talking PG-13 horror movies. And really, this was all Natalie's idea. And I thought it was a terrific idea because lately there's been a big discussion around a movie coming up here soon, gets released in January, called Megan, or M3 Gen. I
don't think that's how it's pronounced.
Hey, I'm going to make sure it catches on. M3 Gen.
We're just going to call her M3.
M3, I like it. M3. But yes, Megan, unless you're living under a rock, I'm sure you've heard about this movie. Little cyborg girl, very lifelike.
She's very companion model.
Yeah.
To me. It's kind of weird. It touches on, I feel like, a lot of cool sci-fi movies we've seen. Personal fan, shout out to the anime Ergo Proxy that has companion models that are children. And that's kind of what I thought of when I saw this movie, obviously with it being a horror movie. But yeah, everyone's seen the dances. Everyone's doing the Megan dance. You know,
even we've got in on it.
Yeah, we have.
It is. It's really a big trend right now. It's a huge topic of discussion.
Yeah.
It's from Blumhouse. I remember around Halloween, Jason Blum started posting pictures of himself getting makeup done and wearing drag, and everybody's like, what the fuck is this? And it was all just to promote Megan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this is a big deal.
Yeah, he put his whole Blumosi inside of this.
Not the Blumosi.
But the main thing that we're getting at here is everyone's been so fucking hyped for this movie. Like, people are like, I'm going to make this my whole personality. Everyone's doing the dances. Mm-hmm. People were dressing up as her for Halloween, and even though we don't know shit about it besides the trailer. But it came out that the rating is going to be PG-13, and I saw a lot of people immediately get shitty, or they're using the reduce your expectations to zero audio. And it just got me thinking, there's so many good horror movies out there that are PG-13, so we want to talk about those today.
Right. PG-13 is not a death sentence, and essentially that's the moral of the fable today is everybody is treating this PG-13 rating for Megan like it's just automatically going to suck, when it really isn't. I mean, there's tons of great PG-13 horror movies that are out there that you and I love, that people love, and they probably don't even realize it's PG-13.
Yeah, because some of them that we're going to get to are pretty scary fucking movies. You know, it doesn't need the gore of Terrifier or all of the tits of a Friday the 13th slasher to make it a good movie. We don't need that to be a good movie. You know, obviously nudity, you know, the gore, the language is going to kind of factor into that rating. So, you know, but even without that, we have proof that you can make a great, brilliant, iconic movie and keep that PG-13 rating.
100%. It's been done, and it can be done again. I mean, it's one of those things I don't understand why everybody makes such a big deal out of the PG-13 rating. It's like, you don't need tits to make it a great horror movie.
Right.
It's, you know,
sorry, Darcy.
Right. No, we love Darcy, and yes, all of us love a good gratuitous nude scene, but it's not necessary. It's just one of those things that's icing on the cake. It's gravy. It's whatever analogy you want to use. It is those things, but it's not necessary to the plot. You don't have to show nudity to show people in horrific situations.
Exactly.
And I get why. I mean, it does add vulnerability to it, but I think with Megan, what we're seeing is that it's vulnerable in the sense that it's a child. If you've watched the trailer, which surprisingly we have, even though we don't really watch a lot of trailers, it's a kid who just lost her parents, and she's in the care of Allison Williams' character. And Allison Williams' character is like some fucking tech genius and creates this doll Megan. This is what I'm gathering from the trailer, obviously. Right. And that's what starts all this. So there's that vulnerability there. You don't need any nudity there. And
Right.
and that's not the only reason, obviously. I'm sure maybe it's not going to be as violent as it would have been with an R rating. Maybe it's not going to go as over the top with some of the kills. But I
Right.
guarantee you, seeing this little fucking cyborg girl run around doing any kind of mischief, I don't give a shit what she's doing, man. I just want to see this robot fucking go bananas.
Right. And obviously with it, being focused around children, it's not like we were expecting nudity. I'll clarify that. But I think what people were expecting is to see this little fucking robot girl like rip arms off of people in like full gratuity. And that's probably just not going to happen. But
yeah.
It is what it is. I'm still fucking excited for it.
I still think it's going to be a really good horror movie. I think it's going to be fucking juicy, and I can't wait. But yeah, so it's rated PG-13. Made us want to do an episode on PG-13 horror, so we will get into that. But before we do, just want to drop the usual. Make sure that you drop us a review on wherever you listen to podcasts. In the recent weeks, we are on a ton of different platforms. I've got us fucking everywhere at this point.
Stevie's been working hard, looking for the rare ones, the not so big ones. Obviously we started with Apple and Spotify and Google, but we've branched out. We're on Pandora now as well. And
Podbean.
Of course, iHeartRadio, Podbean.
Spreaker.
Never heard of these.
Yeah. No, there's some great places that I've been looking into and trying to just get the show out there. So if you're somebody who, obviously you're listening to it, but if you've got friends who aren't listening to it, one of those apps, one of those services, they should be able to listen to us one way or another. So we are out there. Leave us a review. We'd love to hear it. And don't forget, drop us a line at horrorzoidpod@gmail.com. TikTok at horrorzoidpod. Instagram, horrorzoidpod. We left the fucking dumpster fire that is Twitter. So we have a Twitter, but you're not going to reach us
Sorry,
on there.
guys.
So
Not there anymore.
Elon fucked all that. So we're not dicking with Twitter anymore.
But the Instagram page, we're having a lot of fun there.
Oh, yeah.
A lot more content. And we are in the works of a Patreon. So we're super excited to bring more details about that here in the next few weeks. It's going to be a lot of awesome exclusive content. Eventually some merch, a welcome merch kit or monthly merch kind of stuff. So
we've been workshopping a lot of different things. I've literally been just tinkering away at different stuff. Different content that we can put out there. Natalie has been hard at work on the artwork and the graphics, and we are literally this is what we want to do.
Exploding with creativity.
We really are. This is what we want to do. This is our passion. We absolutely love horror movies. We love the horror genre. We love true crime and ghost stories and all this shit. We just love to be scared out of our fucking minds. And we are trying to do everything we can to bring you guys more content. And we appreciate any support you can give us. Like I said, obviously it's gonna be a Patreon, so we are, going to be having subscription services available for people. But there's gonna be some great goodies out there for everybody. We are hard at work, and I think you're gonna really like what we have coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned. Patreon is on the way. But without further ado, we're gonna get into some PG-13 horror, and where better to start than where it all started with PG-13, and that is the film Gremlins.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know the story behind the PG-13 rating, it actually wasn't until the 80s, I believe 1984 to be exact.
Yes, I just pulled that up to fact check. July 1st, 1984.
1984, and there were two movies.
They did this.
There were two movies that prompted the PG-13 rating, because before 1984, believe it or not, it was literally just G, PG, and then R. And then, of course, you had NC-17 and X, XXX, XXX, all that shit.
Which we discussed this a bit before the show, because one of my favorite things to talk about, it's like the nerd fact that I always want to say is like, did you know Poltergeist is a PG movie? Because it was before those ratings were implemented. Even though that's a terrifying fucking movie, it's PG. But yeah, Gremlins... awesome, terrifying. I was actually just talking about this at work today, because I remember the creepy ass scenes of like when the gremlins would get water on them and they like melt into like piles of goo.
Right.
Like, it's fucking creepy.
Right.
And of course it's a Christmas movie, so we're going to talk about that more in a Christmas episode. But, everybody knows Gizmo, the cute little fuzzy, I don't remember what the fuck they're called now. It's just completely out of my mind. But the Gremlins... Mogwai. There we go. But the Gremlins themselves, I remember as a kid being fascinated by them. Not only the way they look in the movie, they're very creepy, but like the way they're like puppets in the movie.
Oh, 100%.
awesome. Like, that is a movie, if they redid it, it's all going to be CG, and I would cry because the Gremlins are so fucking cool with like the way they're kind of like, you know, robotic looking whenever they're moving around.
Yeah, it's trippy watching the Gremlins now, considering that was made over 30 years ago, almost 40 years ago now. It's fucking crazy. But yes, yeah. Gremlins was the start, the epicenter of the PG-13 rating, because like I said, before that, it was just G, PG, and R. You didn't have anything in between PG and R, so you did have films like Poltergeist that was a PG movie.
Yeah.
But Gremlins was one of the movies that got the ball rolling with the PG-13 rating. The other movie that was the cause of it was Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Because of the scenes like Kali Ma.
Yeah.
Shit like that,
like
is
eating monkey brains and taking hearts out of people's chests. Say what you want. I feel like that movie's got a little tinge of horror to it.
That's another episode for another time. But yes, there are plenty of movies that aren't horror that have some fucking great horrific moments.
Right.
And yeah, we will definitely get into that at some point. But yeah, so Gremlins and Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom, because these movies crossed a few lines to where it's like, I can't really say these are PG, but at the same time, they didn't have excessive violence.
Right.
They had violence, but they didn't have excessive violence. They didn't have nudity. They didn't have things like that. So they didn't warrant an R rating. So that is why the Motion Picture Association of America decided to develop the PG-13 rating, something where, you know, it's like it's not really good for kids to see, but it's good for older kids to see.
Exactly.
So it kind of broke that ground there. So those two movies were the start of it. And yes, Gremlins, I absolutely adore Gremlins. It's been forever since I've seen it, but it's Joe Dante, and how can you not love Joe Dante? He's a legend in the filmmaking industry. He's responsible for greats like Gremlins, like The Howling. He even did some cool stuff like in the 90s. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie, Small Soldiers.
Oh my God, yes.
Fucking love Small Soldiers.
That movie is fucking weird.
So weird, so bizarre. But when you think about it being Joe Dante and what he did with Gremlins, they are very Gremlin-esque.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Yeah, so that's why I love Joe Dante. I have so much mad respect for him. He was just on 101 Most Terrifying Movie Moments.
I love seeing him on that. That show is fucking great. And just go watch it. I mean, so many movies that we talk about are on there, but hearing stuff like from all of these directors and actors and things talking about these movies, perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
Joe Dante, he has so much wisdom to impart on all of us. And it's like, he's one of those guys where they could have literally just shown all 101 movie moments and just had Joe Dante break down each and every one of them, and just to hear just the little nuggets of wisdom he was dropping there as a filmmaker, you're like, my goodness, this guy is an absolute legend.
Yeah.
And we are being graced with some great little tidbits here. So go back and watch Gremlins, because it is so much fun. It is a blast. It's right. I want to go back and watch it. I want to go back and revisit it, because there's so much that I can't even sit here.
Yeah, you haven't seen it for years.
I think years.
It's probably been maybe 2-3 years since I've watched it, probably. Maybe 4. I don't know. I lose track of time fast.
Right.
But it's one of those too that I forget a lot of the times as a Christmas movie, because we watched it a lot growing up, but as an adult, I think I hadn't seen it in probably 10 or 12 years, and I popped it in as middle of summer. I was like, holy shit, it's a Christmas movie.
It's
and
such
it's
a wonderful...
scary, and it's like throwing a fucking gremlin in the blender. Like, that shit's insane.
Right, it's
PG-13.
But that exactly, and it's shit like that. It was violent, but not too violent, so that's why they created the PG-13 rating for this little fucking movie about these creatures being exploded and eating shit.
Don't get them wet, and don't feed them after midnight.
Yeah, don't. And it's God, fucking love Gremlins. If you haven't seen it, definitely go watch it. So moving on from Gremlins to one movie that I think really took the PG-13 rating as a challenge. Like, we can be one of the scariest movies you've ever seen, and we don't even need to fucking show that much.
Because so many people, two particular things with this movie. You ask anyone that's into horror movies, you know, going back into the early 2000s, what one of their like scariest movie moments is, and it's in the beginning of this movie. And we're talking The Ring.
The Ring, yes.
7 days.
So
nothing was scarier. See, that's the other thing too, is growing up in a different time where home phones were still a lot more the norm. There's nothing scarier than the first time I fucking watched this movie and I finished it, credits were rolling, phone rings. I thought I was gonna fucking pass out.
That was the movie where if your phone rang at your house after you saw that movie, within 6 months of seeing that movie, you shit your pants.
Right.
It was a shit your pants moment. And that is the impact of a good horror movie.
Yeah.
A good horror movie, it's like when you think about the greats, like the legends that are out there, everybody talks about The Exorcist. Because how many people, like, I remember my uncle being a grown man telling me, oh yeah, I saw The Exorcist when I was like 7 years old and I had to sleep with my mom for months after that because it terrified me.
I heard all sorts of stories about The Exorcist when I was little.
Right. The Exorcist, it became a folklore, right? It became part of the folklore. Like, you had to see it because you had to be in on these stories that people were telling about this movie. It wasn't a movie people just saw. It wasn't just a movie people witnessed. It was a movie people experienced, and then it continued to stick with them. And that's what The Ring did.
Yeah. Oh my God, yes.
In 2002, this was a pop culture phenomenon. And I know I've used that term before, but trust me, when I use it, I mean it, because this is something we really fucking lived through the phenomenon that was The Ring.
Right.
Every fucking thing that came out parodied The Ring. You know, you had Scary Movie that parodied it, obviously, but it wasn't just Scary Movie. It was fucking everything. It was like you turned on a primetime TV show, they were parodying The Ring. You turned on Family Guy, The Simpsons, shit that was known for Saturday Night Live. Everybody parodied this movie, and that's how you know it has slipped into the zeitgeist and the brain, the collective, think wave of all the people who have seen it.
Yeah.
It is an earworm kind of movie. It slips into your brain and it doesn't leave.
No, absolutely. And I know I kind of touched on the phone thing, but there's so many things that came together to make this such a phenomenon. So, obviously this is a movie that is an American adaptation of a Japanese movie that came out a few years prior called Ringu. Japanese horror is just fucking bonkers to me.
Right, and you got to remember, in the late 90s, J-horror, late 90s, early 2000s, J-horror was such a big thing because The Ring, as you had mentioned, Ringu being The Ring being an adaptation of Ringu. There's another movie on our list that we will talk about, another adaptation of a J-horror movie. And but yeah, you're absolutely right, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to state that J-horror was blowing up, exploding, and really weaving its way into other forms of cinema, such as what we saw here with The Ring.
Yeah, absolutely. And something too, though, is, I was thinking about, again, watching this at home, and I feel like this is something that, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong out there, if, people still do this, but back then there were Easter eggs on DVD menus.
I fucking lived for Easter eggs on DVD menus.
Yeah, you'd sit there and click around, try to find something that wasn't highlighted, and The Ring had one. And if you clicked a certain way and you hit the OK button, what does it play but the video from the movie?
It plays the fucking video that everybody is watching that's killing people, and then you get a call that says fucking you die in 7 days. You had the ability to watch that fucking tape, man.
Right.
It was...
And you think about it, obviously...
The best Easter egg of any movie. I'm sorry, hands down. Best Easter egg.
No, I 100% agree, because I remember I clicked it, I watched it, and got a phone call maybe 20 minutes later. And that's why I said I thought I was going to have a fucking panic attack. But it's one of those things, too, also, yes, we had the internet, but not everyone found everything and uploaded it immediately. So, like, being able to watch the video that you don't quite to get to see fully in the movie, like, outside of the movie, was mind-blowing to me.
Right now, I could pull up YouTube as we're recording this, and I could watch the video.
Yeah, there's, like, 3,000 plus channels that have it fucking uploaded.
But this is literally 20 years ago. Before we had that possibility.
Right.
And yeah, you're right. It was absolutely startling to pull up your DVD and see that. I could only imagine if somebody fucking stumbled upon that by accident. Like, I found it because somebody told me about it.
Sure.
Like I read it somewhere or somebody said, oh yeah, if you go into the DVD menu, hit this, it pulls it up.
Hit left, down, and it's there. Yeah, and I think that's kind of what it was with me. I think I heard that you could. I don't think I was dicking around, or I was looking for something, because back then, again, that's what you did. You'd rent a movie, you'd pop it in, and you'd sit around and fuck with the menu and see if there's a cool little Easter egg, because there were a lot of the time. But besides all of that we just went into, the movie also has really, really heavy themes that, even with a PG-13 rating, I feel is a lot to handle, because there is so much with death and loss and mourning, and, whether it's literally the girl in the well or these people who are dying after watching the video, they have all this shit going on. There's multiple funerals in the movie. It's a heavy movie.
It is a very heavy movie. And another thing that, again, I kind of talked about with Megan, but we'll talk about with a lot of these movies, is the reason that PG-13 doesn't need to go as hard with the violence is because of the vulnerability of children. And children are kind of a recurring theme in these. That's a reason why they're PG-13, because you are focusing more on kids with a lot of these movies. The Ring focuses on this little boy who looks like a grown man, but he is a little boy. And
sorry to the kid. I think his name's like Aiden in the movie or something.
Aiden, yes.
But he looked like a little man, especially in the suit.
He looks like a grown man.
But he does so good in the movie. Like, no shame to the look, but it is bizarre. But he also is this character you can see, even as young as he is, he's kind of had to mature on his own because of the weird relationship with the parents. But there's all of that. I mean, all of that's really heavy. But also the movie is just aesthetically pleasing. I would like to say that I think it did all blue way before fucking Twilight did.
There was that I call it the Seattle filter.
Yeah.
Because it takes place in the Pacific Northwest. I think they're even in Seattle. She works for a paper or something in Seattle. But it has this blue tint throughout the whole movie because everything seems rainy. Because Seattle and Washington, of course, high precipitation levels. I'm fully convinced. I've never been to Washington, but if I ever went to fucking Washington, it's going to have that filter just in real life.
I mean, I was there for a week and it rained all but the day that we were leaving.
So it did. It legitimately has that filter on. That's actually, it's not a filter. That's just Seattle.
It's like you go up a mountain to like get a view and you're in fucking fog. And you're like, well, try again tomorrow. I mean, that's how it is. And that's the way that movie feels.
It does. It feels very much like that. The Ring, it really perfectly encapsulates everything like we were talking about earlier. I think it's one of those films. We've mentioned this with other movies, but to me, it feels like one of those films that could only be made when it was made.
Absolutely.
Like it relies
even the
heavily.
Whole opening. We're talking about the scene that I think everyone is terrified of, which is the quick zoom in on the girl in the closet in the beginning.
Amber Tamblin's character.
Yes.
Yeah, terrific shot there.
Yes, but you start with the dynamic of schoolgirls. It's like a weekend. The parents are gone.
Yep.
But there's so many things, again, like what you're saying about when that was made, is you don't have to like go downstairs to answer the kitchen phone off the wall anymore.
No.
Like most people don't have home phones anymore because they have cell phones, and why the fuck would you pay 2 bills?
Well, and that's the other thing is like you're talking about the phones. I'm going back even farther from the beginning of the movies. What are they doing? They're watching TV in the room. Nobody watches TV in their room. They're watching shit on their phones. Even right now, people are listening to us on their fucking phones. Nobody's watching this on TV right now. It's hilarious to me that everything, literally everything, has changed. That movie was 20 years ago, and yes, that's 2 decades. That's a long time. Mm-hmm. But for old fuckers like Natalie Nightmare and Stevie Scares, that wasn't that long ago. We can remember when this shit came out.
Right.
And
I was a sophomore in high school.
I don't even want to talk about that. We're not going down that road. But yes, we were a lot younger. We were kids back then, so we were kind of the age of the girls in the beginning. Mm-hmm. We were in that age group. So kids our age dying, and you get who is it? You get the cameo at the beginning, Adam Brody. Yeah, Adam Brody. Mm-hmm. Yes, you get the Adam Brody cameo at the beginning, which is great. And, there's a bunch of fun stuff there. We were like, but again, this was all this fucked us up. This was like
did.
a great young cast that I was talking about, and all these great young cast members of these kids are fucking dying. Like, what gets, there's nothing more vulnerable than kids being killed. And that was the point I was trying to make earlier when we were talking about the vulnerability of children in these films. And that's why PG-13 doesn't need to go hard with violence. It doesn't need to go hard with fucking nudity, because you have these kids, the vulnerability of these of the age of these kids alone, the high school kids to Aiden, just anybody under the age of 18 dying, you have an instant level of vulnerability that you don't have with other movies that you really were getting up to that point.
See, and it's interesting you say that, because I think on the flip side too, like thinking about when we watched it, and like, yeah, I would have been one of those high school girls hanging out with her friends who rented a VHS tape. Like, that's the shit that we did. And you can relate to that. But on the other side, with Naomi Watts' character, you can identify with a mom who's dealing with loss, who's dealing with a child who's depressed or troubled. All of that is so relatable to a parent, and again, is very terrifying to like think of going through what she goes through. That scene when she finds him watching the tape, and she walks in, and her son, he's like just finished the video.
That great shot of her yelling, "No!" Yeah, I love that.
She screams, and then the phone rings, and you're just like, holy shit. Like, that's when that movie really fucking flips to me.
I agree. And you mentioned a great point. I think another thing that works for the movie and in its favor, again, the reason why it can be PG-13 and still fuck with you is because, like you said, on the flip side, I was talking about the vulnerability of kids. And when you and I were that age, and, we're seeing all these, pretty young people like Adam Brody, he doesn't die in the movie, but people his age, and Amber Tamblyn, Joan of fucking Arcadia.
Right.
When you see these kids dying, you're like, it's fucked up. But now that we're older, and obviously it's like, I've got kids. It is. It's you now. I see it from the perspective of, like you said, of like Naomi Watts' character in the movie, Rachel, and having a kid. And what if one of my fucking little idiots had a videotape and watched it and got themselves killed? That's fucking traumatic.
It is.
So it's one of those. Gore Verbinski directed this, by the way, and if you know that name, it's because he directed a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, at least one of them, maybe more. But he also directed A Cure for Wellness, which is another movie that Natalie and I absolutely adore.
Yeah.
One of our favorites we'll get to talk about in another episode. But Gore Verbinski does this amazing job, and he does it in his other movies as well, especially A Cure for Wellness, where you get to see different perspectives.
Yeah.
It's not just you're seeing it from, obviously we have a point of view character, in Naomi Watts, who we're following, the main character, but you do get to see loss from all sides. It's something that where a teenager, we could watch it as teenagers and scared shitless. We could watch it as adults and absolutely fucking traumatized.
Yeah,
and
it's still scary.
It's so amazing to me how he balances that so well. And you don't feel like either side is really lacking. Like, I feel like both sides of it, watching it as a kid and watching it as an adult, I feel fucking just heavy both ways.
Yeah. No, I think that's the best way to say it. It's heavy.
It is a very heavy movie. Moving on, next movie we want to talk about that was PG-13 that made a really big impression on us, one of our absolute favorites. We're talking about Insidious from 2010.
Yes, obviously directed by our king, James Wan.
Yes, all hail James Wan.
But this movie is yet again another one with an iconic jump scene. Is pretty high on the ratings of, when you look at people with the most scariest movie, what people's reactions, like heart rate and things like that were. But you get the beautiful scene with the lipstick demon appearing quickly. And it's just one of the best, most perfectly executed jump scares to me.
It is. It is definitely one of the best jump scares to ever be in a movie. And it's so effective. And it's funny. I remember I watched a YouTube video about this, and somebody actually broke it down. They said, or no, it was 101 Scariest Movie Moments.
Yeah.
They talk about why it works. And I forget who it is. I want to say it's Edgar Wright, but I could be wrong. It could be somebody else. But whoever's talking about it talks about how it's all about the cuts and how tight the zoom in is. It's all these tight shots and how they cut back and forth from Renee to his mother, and then back to Patrick Wilson's character, and back and forth, and all these shots are super tight, and And it does this great job of lulling you into this sense of security and comfort, and then boom, that fucking lipstick demon pops up right behind
Just
Josh's.
heavy breathing behind Josh.
Yeah. It's so well done, and the way they explain it is masterfully. Like you get why it's so scary. It's one thing to be scared. It's another thing to understand the psychology of why it scares you.
Yes.
And I think that's why I love horror so much. So understanding that now, like, I need to go back and watch that jump scare because I think it's going to make it 10 times better for me to know what went behind it, what James Wan was thinking as he filmed this shot.
Absolutely. And this is one of those movies too that it relies on a lot of sound cues. There's a lot of sharp strings in this movie. So some of the jump scares, like there's one I remember when one of the investigators, Tucker, is taking pictures in the hallway, and you get like a sharp string noise when he rotates he's taking pictures, and then he sees the two girls like behind the clock and they like smile. There's a sound cue there that kind of initiates that jump scare, but it's still fun. But it doesn't get me every time. I feel like the way that scene in the kitchen with the lipstick demon does.
It's funny you talk about that because there is another scene, like everybody loves the lipstick demon jump scare, but to me the scariest fucking jump scare in the movie, and it's another one with a sound cue, is the one when the alarm's going off, Josh is downstairs looking around, and Renee goes into the baby's room, and you see the fucking stranger behind the baby's bed.
The guy, like, backing, all you see is, like, the sheer curtain around the crib, and he's there on the other side.
Jay LaRose's character is fucking standing there, and first off, he's one of the most intimidating fucking guys ever.
Yeah,
Even in that opening to, I think it was, like, Saw 3, when he's pulling the fucking rings out of himself. He's still, like, he's in a vulnerable position, but he still scares the shit out of me.
Yeah.
He just looks like he beat the shit out of anybody. But you do, like she walks into the baby's room and sees him standing right there, and it's,
you get a
it's one of the best jump scares in the whole fucking movie, and it's one of the few times where I can remember being in a theater as an adult fucking man and jumping out of my seat like, holy shit, that was just scary. And it's so well done. It is like but you're right, there's a lot of sound cues, a lot of jump scares. It does rely heavily on the audio and the sound editing of the film to really prey upon people watching so intently and focusing. And James Wan, I think it's one of the reasons why, like, Natalie and I have admitted it before, we hate when sound cues kind of signal a jump scare, because a lot of the times it's almost like telegraphing it to the point where it's like, fuck, that's less scary because you had to add that. It's just giving you
with a loud sound. Like, you're sitting there waiting, and like anyone's gonna jump when you get a loud sound. Yep. But there's a difference between a loud sound, like someone's trying to sneak, and the jump scare is they knock a broomstick over and it clatters.
Right.
Like, and that's a sound jump scare. But I feel like when you add a physical or corporeal being into a scene, it doesn't need a sound cue all the time. No. Like, their presence is enough.
Exactly.
But also, I feel like Insidious, and I don't know, honestly, I didn't even look at the ratings of the other movies, but all of the Insidious movies have an intense soundtrack. They all have sound cue jump scares. And not that all of them have a cue, like the music, but I mean, even I think it was the fourth one we went and saw in theaters, and we were like jumping out of our skin because it's a loud movie.
It is.
But there are some really good jump scares. I think it was the third one that really, really got us. But the fact that you can do it, even with a sound cue, but it goes so well with the visual, is I think what makes that jump scare stand out against the others. Because I feel like each movie has one that I really, really like, but I always go back to that one. I think everybody does.
Well, and it's one of the things I was getting at, talking about the sound cues and the jump scares, is it's not just that. Like, that's a cheap way to do it. Like, that's why we hate it, is because it's a cheap way to do it. Like you said, it's like, it's not just that. And that's the exact point I was trying to make, is that you're right. It's not just the sound cue. It's not just the audio side of it. And it's not even just the jump scare itself. It's the setup. Because James Wan tells you, in this movie especially, it's not just what's going on in the foreground that you need to pay attention to. He's taught you need to pay attention to what's moving around in the background.
I'm glad you said this, because when we started talking about James Wan, I was going to say this is one of our favorite things about his filmmaking, is he's so good at throwing your scene off center, making you
He plays with the periphery so fucking well.
So well. And he does it very quietly in other movies with no cue.
Truth.
I mean, I think even in the second Insidious, there's a scene where the mom is like walking through the home. There's multiple doorways to the large family room. And she walks by one and you see someone standing there, but there's no sound cue. You just see it out of the peripheral. Same thing with the little boy dancing in the house.
I was just getting ready to talk about the little boy scene. The scene with the little fucking boy is one of the most chilling to me. Yeah. And that one gets talked about a lot too. But to me, it's scarier than the jump scare because of the fucking setup.
Yeah.
Because of her walking through. And I remember watching them again. I saw it in theaters when it first came out, and I remember when she's walking through doing the fucking laundry, I'm like, who the fuck was that?
Right.
That little kid. And other people are like, oh, I didn't notice it.
She takes the trash out, and then it's that main scene where she's outside and the camera is inside. And it's showing you that it's filming her looking in, and you see him dancing like at the record player.
Oh, yeah.
Every part of that, because you see him up against the wall. And then when she goes outside, she actually sees him dancing. And when she walks to the other window and he's gone. But then she goes in the house and he's giggling down the hallway. It's a perfect setup. So that's a jump scare. I feel like it's very smart because even though that final jump scare, you get a loud crash.
Yeah.
It's built you up to a point that no matter what happens, you're going to like scream and jump out of your skin. And I fucking love that. I think James Wan is absolutely brilliant. No matter cheap jump scares or not, I feel like these movies are kind of built on some of that. It's part of that type of horror, and I'm fine with that. But there are a lot of very intelligent jump scares in this.
I agree, and that's a great phrase for it, is intelligent jump scares, because I don't like jump scares just in and of themselves, but I like an intelligent jump scare. Is it set up well? Like the one with the little boy. Yes, there's that final jump scare, and to me, it's probably my least favorite part of that scene, but it is necessary. Like, you can't have that scene without the jump scare, and I think that's really what James Wan does, is when you look back at the movie, if you take away the jump scares, is it as scary? No, it's not. And that's the thing. It's like, but if the other films, you can take away the jump scare and it's equally as scary, and you didn't need that moment. Right. And that's the thing. It's like you have to use it in a way that makes sense, and you have to use it in a way that's rewarding.
Yeah.
And that's what James Wan does, and I think that's why he's one of our absolute favorites.
Now, my last thing I'm going to say with Insidious before we move on, I know we barely talked about how great, obviously the jump scares alone, but this is another one that you don't need all of the extra language and flair and gore. There's a lot of great suspense and character building. You really connect with everybody, I feel like, in all of the Insidious movies. Everybody loves Lin Shaye, of course, as Elise. But, and then you get Lee Wanell himself as Specs. It's a great cast all across the board. Fantastic PG-13 movies. But the last one that I want to say is, and I double-checked, it is PG-13, Insidious 3 has one of my favorite scenes of all time, where there's the girl who is sitting in her bed in her bedroom. She lives in an apartment complex, and the cute neighbor boy lives in the one next door, and she knocks on the wall, and there's a knock back, and she texts him, and he says he's not home. So you get that slow, in the pit of your stomach dread, because you're like, who the fuck knocked? So she slowly reaches up and knocks the wall, and you think you're ready mentally with how long the scene is that there's going to be a knock back. But instead, a hand comes down from the goddamn ceiling and makes us scream like little girls and damn near piss ourselves in our homes.
Oh, yeah.
Because we watched that at home and we absolutely fucking lost it and immediately started laughing because it's so loud of a jump scare. It's something that I didn't expect. I didn't expect a hand to come from the fucking ceiling. I was expecting another knock and then you to be like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But it goes a totally different direction. And that one, I think Lee Wanell was pretty heavily involved with.
He was the director of the third one. And it's funny you mentioned that because I remember that you kind of touched upon it briefly a few minutes ago. You said that the third one was the one that got us, and that's the fucking scene that got us. And we had two cats at the time, and I'll never fucking forget that I literally, you say jump scare, I literally jumped out of my fucking couch, and those two cats went fucking running. They were terrified because they were like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
You would have thought a damn gun went off.
Oh, yeah.
But no, it was just fucking Lee Wanell scaring the poop out of us.
Exactly. Now, another excited one, I beat you to it, that we're going to get to, that I honestly didn't expect when you said that this was PG-13. I was kind of like, no fucking way. But Drag Me to Hell by Sam Raimi, PG-13. I don't think I've seen anyone say that they don't like this movie, and I can see why.
Drag Me to Hell is one of those movies where you're not ready for it. There's just no other way to put it. You're not ready for whatever this movie. I don't care who you are. I don't care what you've heard about this movie. You're not fucking ready for it. It packs so much what the fuckery that it's like it's mind blowing. Like I don't even know where to begin with this movie. Like where do we talk? Like where do we begin?
Where do you begin? Well, everyone in the horror community knows when Justin Long's on screen, shit's gonna go down.
Bad shit's gonna go down, man. Not just shit, but bad shit. As we learned from Barbarian recently, and as we first learned in fucking Jeepers Creepers, you put Justin Long in a horror movie, it's gonna end badly. And this one really fucking does. So that's probably where we should begin, is the fucking ending. Because I think that is really what perfectly ties everything together. The ending to Drag Me to Hell is one of the most memorable. Mm-hmm. It is one of those that will stay with you and stick with you. And part of it is Justin Long, but it really is just Sam Raimi going full Sam Raimi.
Yeah.
Because you can't convince me this isn't secretly an Evil Dead movie, by the way. But
really,
right? Like I am fully convinced this exists in the same universe as fucking Ash Williams. But the reason I say that is because the fucking end scene is, it literally, the title lives up to its name. She gets dragged to fucking hell, and these fucking she falls into a railroad tracks. The earth opens up. These hands come out and literally fucking grab her. And kudos to Sam Raimi, because it looked like those things were fucking holding on for dear life.
Yeah.
I've never seen that conveyed with CGI before, but I felt like these little fucking CGI arms that were coming up, like they were flexing.
Painful. It's painful to watch.
It is hard to fucking watch.
And if you're just like, fuck it, I don't want to watch this whole movie, I'm sure you could go find the ending.
Just go find the ending. It's worth it, man. It's one of those,
absolutely worth it.
I will perfectly endorse that. If you don't want to, like, I'm not one of those people who say, you have to go see a fucking movie, you have to see the whole movie. No, there's just some movies where if you just want to watch that scene, go watch it, but go fucking watch that ending. And the reason I say Justin Long helps it is because obviously he's got to watch his girlfriend, his fiance, love of his life, whatever the fuck she is to him, literally get dragged to hell, the earth open up. Like, he's got to wrap his head around that the fucking earth just opened up and demons came out and grabbed a person, let alone that it was his person.
While the train was going over it.
Right, and then the train goes over it and he's just left staring. And he's got these... He's not
reaching and he's shaking.
He's not that he's crying either. This is the fucking thing I love about this scene. It's not that he's crying.
Yeah.
But his eyes are red and watery.
They're welling up. Like,
right. Well, and that's the thing. It's like, it's a well up that I've never seen before from an actor. I'm like, get this fucking dude an Oscar because it's some of the best tears, like prelude to tears, one of the best prelude to tears that I've seen in a movie.
See, you say prelude to tears. I feel like that face conveys so many things at once because it's shock and terror at its core, because your body is almost reacting to the horrific thing that you're seeing and you can't even catch up. Like, when you're so fucked up that your eyes are leaking but you don't feel like you're crying, like, that's terror.
You're right. There's a hollow emptiness to it because of what everything that's washing over him in that moment.
He's so good.
He just has this hopelessness, this utter, everything is out of my control. I'm telling you,
and
like,
he just looks at the button and the fucking movie ends. You're like,
and I know we're heaping high praise on this scene and this movie and Justin Long, but fuck, man, literally, like I said, you don't have to watch the movie, but watch that fucking ending. Watch his reaction and his facial control of his facial movements and muscles and shit, and that's acting. Like, if you want to learn how to be an actor during a pivotal scene in a movie like that, that's the one. Fucking Justin Long, Drag Me to Hell. That ending, it will fuck you up.
It will. But besides that, there's so many things in the movie. So there's a talking goat that the only reason it's talking is because the demon shifts to it or whatever this evil entity is. But there's also even though it's not on screen, the main character thinks that a blood sacrifice will help her curse be lifted, and she looks at her kitten, and then she looks at her kitchen knife, and then she's out in the garden with blood on her.
Scene is her
she's burying a kitten.
I love it.
And it's like, those are the things that you're like, that's why whenever you're like, oh, Drag Me to Hell's PG-13, I was like, there's no fucking way. Because there's some disgusting, very Sam Raimi scenes, a lot of gross, weird vomit scene. But and the thing with the kitten, the whole them trying to exorcise this entity to lift this curse.
The fucking angry gypsy lady. One of the best creepy old ladies in a fucking movie.
She's so good. I was just looking. Her name's Lorna Raver. And she plays this old woman who goes to the bank and gets declined this like extension on a loan, basically. And she curses this girl for not helping her.
Yeah.
But then she dies, and the main character, there's the scene where she tries to go over to the house and she's trying to find answers to help this evil entity stop following her, and there's the coffin gets knocked over and the corpse falls on her, and it's just one of the most disgusting fucking scenes. That movie's got some scenes that are absolutely fucking
It's
rough.
pretty fucking grody. Before we move on to the next movie, I do have a fun story about this fucking movie. So I had an ex-girlfriend who used to work at a fucking bank. And I remember she came home one day. She told me she had a gypsy curse put on me, and I was like, "Oh fuck, you're getting dragged to hell." And I remember thinking to myself, like, that's all I could think. She's telling me this story. She's like shaking. She had this angry fucking gypsy lady curse her, and she's just absolutely just shaken to the core. And meanwhile, I'm over here sitting like I'm fucking in a Sam Raimi movie. I'm about to be Justin Longed. Like, things don't end well for Justin Long in these movies.
No.
Like, this is not good. So like it's like that scene, the way he fucking does it, again, can't recommend enough. Perfect fucking good old Justin Long horror movie.
He's perfect through this whole movie,
He
whether
is.
it's terror or confusion, the dinner scene. He's just
The dinner
fantastic.
scene. We can't get into all this. We have other movies we have to talk about, but we could do a whole fucking episode on Drag Me to Hell.
Yeah, we could.
The next movie we want to talk about, though, similar to The Ring, is The Grudge. Also a remake of a J-horror movie that was insanely popular. Ju-on the Grudge took off massively over in Japan and became an international sensation. American audiences loved it so much. And the director, Takashi Shimizu, actually wanted to bring it to American audiences, so he did the remake himself. It's one of the rare instances of an artist covering their own song.
Right, and I absolutely fucking love this. I know whenever I learned that, I loved the movie even more because
I think it does give you a better appreciation knowing that he was involved from start to finish.
Well, it's really cool from an artist standpoint of any kind of creative design, whether it's recreating an illustration that you've done, re-recording a song that you've played, but being able to go and record and film a movie that you've technically already done before, but with some new cast, some obviously icons, Sarah Michelle Gellar. You have these amazing additions to this phenomenal cast from Japan, and it melds together in this really cool way, and it made me appreciate the movie even more, because I think it'd be really fucking cool if someone was like, hey, go redo that thing you did 5 years ago.
Well, and it's funny because you say that, and the person who did that to Takashi Shimizu was none other than who we just talked about with Drag Me to Hell. It was Sam Raimi.
Right.
Sam Raimi was the one who said, man, this fucking movie is great, and, obviously it's this huge hit in America now, too. It's not just in Japan, it's in America. What if we brought you in to do the American movie?
Right.
And who would not say yes to that?
Exactly.
Like that's an offer you can't refuse. But it like Sam Raimi, it shows that he wanted the film done right. He didn't just want a regular American remake. I mean, this was 2004, 2005 that The Grudge came along. So we'd already been treated to a lot of like remakes and a lot of reboots and a lot of
there was a lot of J-horror stuff kind of around that same time period.
There was,
A lot of them didn't do nearly as well, but I recall them coming out. But The Grudge is one that it really plays with sound, obviously, with the main character with the creepy ass throat noise.
Right, it's not Kayako, but it is
right.
Like the person, the entity that replaces Kayako is fucking just as terrifying, just as dreadful.
Sadako, I think is her name.
Oh.
There's Kayako and... No, I'm sorry. I'm going to get them confused. I'm thinking Ju-on.
Yeah.
and Ringu.
Right,
But,
yeah. I was about to say Sadako is, yes, Ringu. But,
yes.
yeah, no, this entity to replace Kayako in The Grudge is absolutely wonderful. And, again, just as terrifying and just as jarring in these death scenes. Like, they are as impactful as what you're getting in the Japanese version. And you know, that's the funny thing. Usually, like you said, there's this loss in translation. But I think what we were talking about earlier with Takashi Shimizu being involved, he made sure that it was still that same quality and still true to what he created years ago with Ju-on.
No, absolutely. And it's got its scenes that I think also really stuck with me. Mm-hmm. There's the scene with the girl with the jaw.
Right.
That's just like fucking gone.
Oh, the Ted Raimi scene, like when he's like checking on her and she fucks him up. I love the Ted Raimi death scene. It's one of my favorites. First off, I love Ted Raimi. Secondly, it's like just seeing him get absolutely fucked up in that scene is wonderful. Another one of my favorite parts of the movie, Clea Duvall is in it. Clea Duvall, of course, from The Faculty, and But I'm a Cheerleader. You know, some wonderful roles. I absolutely love everything she does, but she does a great job of playing the victim in this movie, which is strange because usually I feel like she has a much stronger role, and I feel like she's, you know, a little bit more, you know, more of a stronger character. Just she brings a little bit more oomph to the role, whereas this one she didn't need that, and she didn't bring it, and she still does it so wonderful. Like, she's such a chameleon. Like, I love her in this movie, even though she has such a small role. I don't think her role can be understated. She's one of my favorite actresses, and even in this little supporting bit role, she still just knocks it out of the park.
Right, and you get a really scary scene.
you get plenty of scary scenes in this one. Like the scene with the bed, I mean, I think is the one that fucks me up the most. But
yeah, everyone wants to hide under their covers, but then it's under the covers with you.
You can't escape it. It's, you know, there's not really a lot you can't say about The Grudge. It brings a lot to the table, and it's one that I think we can all appreciate, and I think we all have this love and respect for it. Like, that's the thing. I don't see a lot of people say bad things about this Grudge movie. You know, some of the sequels maybe, but you know, this one, it's one of the few that gets a lot of universal love. Like, I don't see a lot of hate, and I don't see a lot of trash talk, especially in this day and age. You would think it would get, you know, a little
Right. No, absolutely, because it's also one of those, though. I mean, maybe people would appreciate the fact that it's a simple horror movie. I feel like a lot of people kind of appreciate some of that more. Like, it doesn't have to be big and over the top, because I feel like this is a movie that it does keep things pretty simple. You have pretty basic for the settings where it's done, and a lot of the scares are done in a very minimal way even. I don't know. I think that just kind of makes it a prettier movie, even though it's really scary and disturbing.
It's funny you say that, because I think that is something that with these PG-13 horror movies, when you can't go as far with the gore, when you can't go as far with the brutality and the blood and things like that, when you can't go Terrifier 2, you have to rely on these other ways to scare people. And the reason these movies stood out to us so much, the reason they made our episode today, is because they do that. Like, you don't notice there's not a lot of gore. You don't notice there's not a lot of blood. You don't notice the things that are missing, because the things that they have put in there instead speak volumes and leave such a huge impact on you. And The Grudge is one of those. Like, I'll never forget the scene of Bill Pullman's character just fucking toppling over the goddamn, the balcony. Like, that scene alone is enough to fucking, like, I think I remember hearing people shut the movie off after seeing that part, because it's just tough. And that's one of the first fucking scenes that you see.
But then you also, I think something that's scary is the flashback.
Yeah, the flashback ties everything very well together and really makes the impact of what we see throughout the rest of the film all the more meaningful. And again, that's what PG-13 does. They can focus on the meaning and not get too hung up on the blood, the gore, the action. It's about the story.
Yeah.
So that's The Grudge lets the story unfold. The next movie we're going to talk about does something similar, The Sixth Sense. I mean, it's the talk about a story unfolding. Like, it was the twist ending.
Right.
It was when people say twist ending, like all you had to say was like, oh, like it became, oh, the M. Night Shyamalan twist ending.
Right.
And that's like because of this fucking movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those that I would absolutely love to see for the first time again. I remember seeing it in the theaters and was just like, the theater was just like a low mumble across the crowd of realization.
Everybody was buzzing.
Yeah.
Everybody was buzzing. Like that movie, it was one of the first few times that I can remember in my lifetime of a horror movie having that kind of impact on people. Because we go back and like I said, we talked about The Ring. You know, this was before The Ring because this was Sixth Sense was what, 99? Ring was 2002. So Sixth Sense, like it's 99, it's late 90s. People before us, like the generation before us, would always talk about shit like The Exorcist and Nightmare on Elm Street and and Halloween and all these movies that we unfortunately didn't get a chance to live through. We've gone back and we appreciate them, we love them, watch them all the time. But Sixth Sense was the first one that really I remember coming along in our lifetime that blew up. And we could sit there and say this was our horror movie.
Yeah, I feel like if you see parody t-shirts like in your Walmart, that's like, I see decaf.
I see
like,
blank people.
Right.
I see blank people.
Yeah.
That fucking phrase is still everywhere. 23 years later.
Yeah.
That phrase is still everywhere. I see dead people.
Absolutely.
And then it evolved into I see all sorts of other people.
Yeah, anything it could be, it was.
Yeah. It's like Scary Movie had Marlon Wayans do the great I see white people. You know, and it's like it's you know, it's so great. Like I love the parodies that came out, but it infiltrated everybody's dialogue, the pop culture lexicon. It was like everybody's vocabulary had changed. Because you had I see dead people.
Right.
The iconic scene with Haley Joel Osment saying it to Bruce Willis. And then it became another thing with the twist ending where we find out, fucking spoiler of all spoiler alerts here, Bruce Willis is dead the whole time.
Right.
Like,
so that's why you're communicating with this kid and all your other interactions in the movie feel really weird.
Yeah. It's so cool to me to see that the Sixth Sense still lives on the way it does. And things in retrospect that I love about it, because we can talk all day about the Sixth Sense, but I think one of the things the reason it resonated with people, and I'll fucking die on this hill, is because it was PG-13. And you're gonna think that's crazy. How are you making that leap? The reason it resonated because it's PG-13 is because more people could see it. And that's the point. When we get down to it, when we try to put a bow on all of this, is PG-13 means more people are going to see it. And that's why a studio, when you're asking, well, why would a studio make a PG-13 movie? It's so more people can see it. Yeah. Because you literally, if you make a movie, if you give it an R rating that's 17 and above, you're really losing out on a whole generation of kids who can go see that movie from 13 to 17.
Yeah, no, I think that's a valid point. I feel like that's why some of the kind of like horror sci-fi movies tend to lean towards PG-13 is because you can snag that like younger crowd to buy into your movie.
And it's not bad marketing. It's genius. It's why you'll never see an R-rated Marvel movie.
Right.
Well, except for Deadpool, but you know, it's a different story.
Yeah.
But that's why a majority, over 95% of the Marvel movies that you're going to see will always be PG-13 at worst.
Yeah.
Because they want those fucking kids to bug their parents to buy tickets to go see the movie.
Yeah.
That is because that's who's going to buy the merch. That's who's going to pay for the tickets. That's who's going to give you the dollars. And at the end of the day, a movie is about making money.
It is.
And The Sixth Sense made fucking bank.
Yes,
I don't have the number in front of me right now, but it made money hand over fist. I can tell you just on the fact that merchandise sales alone, because of the I see dead people fucking phrase. Like,
Right.
I guarantee you, we make no money on this podcast, but I guarantee you every time we've said I see dead people, M. Night Shyamalan's getting a few pennies in his pocket.
Pennies just leaking
Right,
into a bank
right. We'll
account
get nothing.
somewhere.
We get nothing. But
Right.
M. Night Shyamalan's making a few pennies just because we said I see dead people 20 times. So congrats, M. Night. You get our money. But The Sixth Sense, and M. Night Shyamalan has had some other movies that really resonated with people that were PG-13. The
Sure.
Visit is one we talked about recently. It was
Yeah.
PG-13.
And see, the whole time you're talking about this, though, you mentioned Marvel, and all I could think of, though, was it's bizarre to think that these two movies both have the same rating, and one of them I see like a kid with a bullet wound through his head, and the other I don't. Or just, you mentioned The Visit, the diaper scene in The Visit. You wouldn't see something like that in a Marvel movie, yet they have the same rating.
That's funny. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
It's really fucked up when you think about it, because The Sixth Sense has some very disturbing imagery. Very disturbing.
I'm not gonna lie though. I really want to see Sebastian Stan shove a diaper in Tom Holland's face. Like, I think that'd be. See, you're talking. That's all I'm thinking now. I want to see Winter Soldier fucking give a cow pie to fucking Spider-Man. That's what I want to see now.
That'd be a Deadpool thing, I feel.
That would be a Deadpool thing. Fuck.
There we go.
That's like, God. Maybe Deadpool 3 will be a horror movie. How cool would that be? And then we can talk about it on this podcast. That would be so fucking funny. So, obviously, we're getting way off topic here. So, we're going to keep talking about some PG-13 horror movies. The next one we want to talk about is it's brought to us by James Wan. It's not directed by James Wan, but this is where James Wan was a producer, bringing us more great horror movies. And he brought us this little gem called Lights Out.
Yes, I fucking love this movie.
You introduced me to this movie because I remember it came out, and it had a little bit of a buzz, but honestly, it just kind of fell off the radar shortly after it came out.
Yeah, I feel like this one's a little bit underrated, but it's one of those that I love. I love whenever you see a horror short that does well, that gets recognized, and it just gets noticed by the right person, and someone's like, I want to make this a whole fucking movie. Right. And it's literally, you can go onto YouTube right now, type in Lights Out short, and watch this.
The original short film that led to this major motion picture.
Yes, which really cool thing about it is the woman that's in the short who's looking down her hallway, flipping her light on and off, and every time she turns it off, there's an entity there, does the same thing in the beginning of the movie. She has a small role kind of leaving the office or the building at the end of the day.
But she sees it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I love, is that she sees it.
But then she's like, fuck this shit, I'm out.
I've fucking been down this road before.
Right.
And it's funny you say that's the original actress, but it's also the original director. David Sandberg created the short Lights Out, this amazing creature design that
so creepy.
Oh, it's so creepy. And James Wan obviously was introduced to the short that David Sandberg posted and said, yep, I'm putting my money on this guy, and we're going to make this a whole fucking thing.
Yeah.
And the feature-length movie comes out really well, in my opinion. I like it. I know, Natalie, it's one of your favorites. But you're right, it's not one that gets talked about a lot. But there's nothing terribly too graphic about it. A lot of what's creepy about the movie is more so the dynamic when you think about between the characters, because while it's essentially kind of a creature feature with this Diana character who is the main antagonist, plaguing this our main character's mom, this Diana character, while it on the surface it looks like it's a creature feature, it's more about the dynamic and the relationship between our main character, played by Teresa Palmer, her mother Maria Bello, and then of course her younger brother. The dynamic of this family after their father dies,
right?
Which is still done by Diana. So I mean, it literally kicks off the movie with the father's death. But yeah, it's really the relationship that is kind of the horror of the film when you think about it.
It is, and it's not that I don't feel like the performances in this movie are particularly overwhelming by any means. I feel like the mom does really fucking well.
Oh, it's Maria Bello. I mean,
right.
she's she's a pro.
But you still have this like edgy young adult who has some good scenes, but there's some of it I feel like it's not quite believable. But even that being said, the chemistry I feel like they have on screen together whenever she is an angry daughter for all of the right reasons, it feels like, and a mom who's not well, and she sounds like she goes on and off meds and things like that, and she has a lot of mental struggles, is really, I feel like, unfortunately, probably relatable to a lot of people, and it gives the movie a really good element. I feel like that kind of pulls you in. It makes you actually care about them, and I like that in a horror movie, because, yeah, I like turning on a mindless movie. I don't give a fuck about who lives, who dies, but I enjoy a movie whenever I'm, like, rooting for the people to win and, like, have more of a connection. I feel like they do really well in that movie, even if it's kind of underperformed.
It is, yeah. The acting is not going to win any awards by any means, but one thing I think that they did so well with this was, again, the violence doesn't have to be overwhelming because the title is literally Lights Out. It's
you're scared of the lights to
right.
go out.
It's one of your worst fears is fear of shit in the dark.
Yeah.
And this entity, this creature, can only attack in the dark. And they play with that really well because there's one scene where you've got like the light coming in from outside, and you're they play with it to the point where it's like it flashes, and it goes out, flashes.
It's like those neon.
Yeah, it's like that
lights.
neon light, and it's like it flashes, it goes out, and every time it flashes, you're like, "Fuck, something's gonna be here," and they play on that very well. It's intelligent. It's like we've had movies where it's fear of the dark, but this is one of the few where they prey upon that in a way that I haven't seen before, and I think David Sandberg deserves a lot of credit for kind of subverting the expectations there with this film. It's very subverting expectations type film.
It is. I totally agree.
Yeah. Next one we're going to talk about is one I recently watched for the first time. That's one of your absolute favorites, and I finally got to see 1408.
Yes, I really fucking like this movie.
Yeah, it's one of those films that, I mean, I see small pockets of people talk about and appreciate, but it is not one that people are banging on the trash can, walking around yelling about up and down the street, singing its praises constantly.
Yeah.
It's one of those that I think it's a well-made movie. I think it's a very well done film, but it just doesn't have that same kind of following like other films do, especially for a Stephen King adaptation.
Right. And I mean, I think this one's like one of his novellas. It's not one of his like giant fucking 1,000-page like it, but it's I feel like it's just a really cool story, but it's probably one of those that it didn't have enough wow factor story-wise compared to other Stephen King stuff to be as high as some of the other really good Stephen King movies. But I agree. I think it's well made. Obviously, some of the CG might be a little bit weird at times to you, just kind of compared to what we have now. But
I don't know. For the time, I felt like
really good ghost story.
Yeah, it's a great ghost story, and I think for the time, the effects weren't bad. Like I said, I watched it recently for the first time, and I remember thinking there was nothing that like jumped out to me as like overly bad. Yeah, it's like CGI's come a long way in 14 years, but 15 years, but I think it does. I think it holds up pretty well. But it's you also have it has this timelessness because Samuel L. Jackson, like it has John Cusack. You've got terrific acting all the way around throughout the whole film.
Yeah.
But I think one thing that may have the film may have suffered from is for being a Stephen King adaptation. Think about when it came along. Like we have had so many great Stephen King adaptations at this point. I mean, Carrie by Brian De Palma, fucking Shawshank Redemption, Frank Darabont. Like what? I mean, it had such a hard time, such a high expectation to live up to, and then you factor in that cast that we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, I can understand kind of why at the time it may have been underwhelming. It may not have lived up to the expectations, but I think when you look back, it's one of the few moments where clearly a studio was willing to give money to this movie to see it do well. They clearly invested in it to a point where they wanted to see something happen with it. They were able to pay big stars to be in the film, and it's I think they wanted it to be on that level with like Shawshank and The Shining and Carrie and shit like that, but it was never going to be that. But what it is, in retrospect, is it's a really enjoyable horror movie.
I 100% agree, because I just feel like I don't know, there's probably something that maybe just the pacing, I don't know what it is about this movie that I feel like would probably be why people rate it maybe a little bit lower than others. But I don't know, I just think it's really good. It doesn't have the greatest twist of all time, but I think it has a good one. And this is one, though, I can watch and look at and go, well, I can see why this is PG-13, because there's nothing necessarily graphic, in my opinion, in this movie.
It feels safe.
It is.
Which is weird. And being in a horror movie, you don't want to feel safe. And I think that's probably the biggest detriment to the film is like I never felt as an audience member, I never felt at risk, and I feel like you watch a horror movie, you want to feel, you feel fear because you feel like it's something that could affect you and you would be at risk of something. Whereas 1408 almost feels like you can, unless you're a drugged out fucking writer like Stephen King when he was coked out, you're probably not going to be able to relate too much to this main character.
Yeah.
They try to add the family dynamic to it, but it's
which is good, but it just kind of, I don't know.
It's almost like a misdirection. Like you're watching and like I personally, one of my favorite aspects of the whole film is the dynamic between Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson. I think they have tremendous chemistry.
Oh yeah,
I think they play adversaries so well.
Yeah.
In fact, I want to say there's another movie where they are kind of like butting heads. It's not really important, but they do. They establish this really great bond and relationship, and they kind of play off of each other well. Very a good tit for tat, kind of relationship there established early, and then we don't get that. We don't really have a lot of that. It focuses, then it goes into the family stuff. And I think as an audience member watching it, like I said, I just watched it for the first time recently. I'm sitting there thinking, I would love to see these two just fucking go at it the whole movie. But you get that little glimpse in the beginning, and that's kind of it. You get a little bit more, but that's really not much.
And then it's just him in the evil room.
And the family thing is almost like... I don't know. It's like it's not the story I was really interested in. You kind of like dangled the carrot in front of me and took it away.
Well, and this is one of those where they play their cards in a certain way, but I almost wish that they hadn't, because I feel like whenever you're following his character into the hotel, all you get is that he does these paranormal things, but he doesn't believe in shit. And you really don't
you get that really weird scene in the beginning where he's at the B&B of the fucking place.
So you get his character, like, he's obviously just doing it for the money.
Right.
And, like, he doesn't really believe in it. He's kind of, he's pretty arrogant in, the way he talks with people and things. But you don't get any kind of attachment. And this is one of those that I would have rather seen a little bit more of the family stuff unfold beforehand. Because if you knew that he... lost his daughter to cancer, which I believe is what they imply in the movie, and he's separated from his wife, and it was really rocky. Knowing that was what he had gone through before the hotel, I think when the TV clicks on and it's playing an old family video, would have hit home more than you're going, oh, his daughter must have died.
Yeah.
And it's like you kind of piece it together as he sees it. And I just feel like maybe getting that more of a connection with him before he goes into the hotel would have made those moments a bit more powerful. But I feel like it does kind of make it up in the end, because there's the part where the room fucks with him.
Oh,
and
it
shows
hits
him
you
his dead daughter
hard.
And it's a scene that to me is so beautiful and traumatic and jarring.
Yeah.
It's, to me, one of the scariest scenes in the movie.
It is. It's scary in a different sense. It's not scary in the sense that it's going to just like jump scare or like a slasher film. It's scary in the sense that, and it's not even scary, like I said, like real shit scares me, like home invasion type stuff like The Strangers, but this is real in a different sense. And I don't think audiences were really ready for that. I don't mean to say it in a pretentious way, because even I wasn't ready for it watching it. And I remember... You get to that scene and you're like, yeah, the daughter's definitely going to come into play, and obviously they're going to use it to fuck with him, but you don't think it's going to go that far.
Yeah.
It's like the audience's expectations are a rubber band, and you can pull the elastic back so far before you snap it back into place. But it's like you just did like these little flicks. Then all of a sudden you get a big fucking snap back on that scene with him and his daughter, and you're like, damn, I wasn't ready for that.
Right. That's what I mean. It's jarring.
Hits you.
It gives me like head to toe goosebumps every fucking time.
It's a badass scene, but it's like, again, it's a little too late. It's badass. It's great in a microcosm when you look at that scene just in and of itself. But to me, it's not, I don't know. It's a little, by the time that comes around, I don't know. I was a little, I don't want to say lose interest, but it kind of happens before that scene.
I agree.
Yeah. So the last movie we're going to talk about that we liked out of PG-13 horror, because we will give you a bad example. Trust me, we'll give you a bad one. But the last of our great examples to show you why PG-13 can be so great is Mama from 2013 by the great Andy Muschietti.
This movie fucking scared the shit out of me, guys. Stevie showed me this a couple years ago, and it's one of those that is right up there with why The Grudge made me, like, sleep with my fucking light on, is because the noises that Mama makes is just fucking creepy.
They're
it's
very
like the
similar
creepy,
to
throaty, screamy growl things. Don't like it. Makes me fucking uncomfortable.
Very similar to Kayako. Very good point. I never thought about it like that, but yes, Mama is...
It's like the broken throat noise. It's so freaky.
Mama has... I could see, like, if you would have told me that's inspired by a J-horror thing, I would have believed you. But it's actually, I believe Andy Muschietti developed this idea in a short film. And that's what, and Guillermo del Toro, again, found, like we talked about with some of the other directors in this other episode, was, Guillermo del Toro discovered Andy Muschietti, gave him a chance to make this movie called Mama. And it is very del Toro-esque in the design. She's very otherworldly, even though she has her origins in the earth. She's a ghost. She's a woman who existed at one point, but now she has become this kind of feral spirit that protects children and vulnerable things in the woods. And she has this very soft nature about her, but at the same time, what she does, the way she protects these innocent beings, is very violent and very fucking intense.
Yeah, she's scary, and I think this is one that is Javier Botet.
It's Javier Botet. God, we're gonna have to do a Javier Botet T-shirt. We've name dropped him so much on this show. We fucking love Javier Botet.
We do. He's fucking amazing, and the way he moves, the way he creates these characters in the movements that he has. So they just have this prosthetic on for the face to kind of have this warped kind of side, just odd features. And then, of course, they extend his fingers, as I feel like they do with any time he's a creature in a fucking movie, especially with Andy.
Hey, you got long fingers? Let's make them longer. Scare the shit out of these people.
Exactly.
That's their strategy with Javier Botet.
And she just floats around, and it's
I feel like Andy Muschietti walks in to when Javier Botet is getting makeup done, and he's like, "Hey, how long are them fingers? Make them longer." I feel like that's just Andy Muschietti's strategy. It's like, look, however long you think they need to be twice as long, because we need to scare these audiences.
He plays on the fear. I feel like I was one of these kids that was always really creeped out by things with extra long arms, extra long fingers, not necessarily extra long legs, maybe a little bit, but Javier Botet is a tall, lanky guy already. Right. And then they add on these prosthetics that's just he has the Doug Jones vibe.
I was getting ready to say he's very Doug Jonesy in that way. Like he's already a tall, lanky human being, but then you just accentuate those features and exaggerate them to a point where it becomes
it's like 8-inch fingers.
And I think it plays into Uncanny Valley a little bit too, with the fact that they are human, but there's something inhuman once you get to that point where the limbs become longer and the phalanges become longer. It's very unsettling, very Uncanny Valley at that point. And that's what Mama kind of is. And then you factor in her the other part of her aesthetic, which is just pure darkness.
Right.
Like
she like moves with the shadows.
She moves with the shadows, but all of her tones, even in the brightest of settings in their house with the kids in their room, she's black and gray, and it's like it's one of those things where you don't know, because obviously she has these tragic origins, as we learn about in the movie, having killed herself and her child and all that. You learn about those sad origins, but it's almost like what happens to her, and they kind of show this visually. Andy Muschietti does a great job of this, that the darkness consumed her. And whether it's a darkness of evil, whether it's a darkness of sadness, it the whole time the movie just you don't know if she's evil, if she's sad, if she's both. You don't know like where the motivation came from. You just know that the way she exists now is this just awful fucking entity that will stoop to ruthless lows
Right.
to protect these children.
And, like, keep her child. Like, she wants her child back.
Right.
And she basically spirits away a child at the end of the movie.
That fucking scene. That scene at the end when she wraps up, there's Victoria.
Like
so Victoria's the older daughter. So I forget the younger daughter's name. She's got the younger daughter there, and she's just fucking Lily. She's got Lily in the fucking little cocoon, and Lily's just like happy as can be, and she's got the little moths or butterflies, wherever the fuck they are, and then all of a sudden you just see her like right before she hits the water. They, like you said, they just spirit away.
Yeah,
and you're like, that.
And there's just like moths that fly out, and that's it. And
that ending fucked me mentally, emotionally, spiritually, just on a molecular level.
It's so fucking sad.
Oh, I love that ending. It's so dark and poetic and beautiful and just soul destroying. The last thing I want to say about Mama before we move on to our movie that we want to shit on is that scene when she puts on the grandma's skin.
Oh my god.
Bro, that fucking scene, just thinking about it makes my fucking skin crawl. When the girl walks into the kitchen and she's like, she doesn't call her grandma. I forget what she calls her. She calls her name, but she's like, she says her name, and the bitch turns around and just the fucking.
Yep.
It's so gross. It's
scary. It's
like
a freaky fucking movie.
It's like, have you seen It Chapter 2, the scene where Bill Hader is like, just goes slack-jawed by staring into Pennywise's deadlights? It's like that, but somebody told Andy Muschietti, just tone down what you did in Mama, and that works perfect for Bill Hader. Because it really is. It's very similar because she's got the arm dangling there because she's just wearing the bitch's skin. And you're like, fuck, man. It is like, because, it's getting into some shit that is unsettling for me.
Absolutely. The whole, the climax of that movie is just fucking bonkers.
Wild as fuck, and I love it. One of my favorites. I love Mama. Now, the movie we want to shit on to show you that not all PG-13 movies are great, because let's say the whole point of this was to show you that Megan will be a good movie because it's PG-13.
We hope.
It's a 90% probability, because we are going to give you 1 out of the 10 movies that we're talking about today is pure shite. So it could end up going this direction. We're talking When a Stranger Calls from 2006. And
Lord have mercy.
This movie is fucking hot putrid garbage, and I love every fucking second of it. It is just good trash fucking TV movie. And it's not made for TV. It actually got a theatrical release. Like, somebody hoped this thing was going to make fucking money.
Right.
Somebody put this out there thinking, this? Like, why wouldn't people put money down to watch this movie? And it's goddamn awful.
It is. I did not see this one when it came out. I know
nobody did. That's why they didn't make any more.
I mean, no. So it did okay in the box office. I had to pull it up, but I'm looking, and I feel like this is one of those things that you can look up, and we don't pay attention to ratings here at Horror Zoid. We don't care what you think about how good or bad it is. We want to watch it.
Fuck your Totten Tomatoes. We don't care.
And judge for ourselves. But I feel like you can get a good idea on if you were going to like or enjoy a movie by doing this. You can Google the movie that you're in question of. So I put in When a Stranger Calls. You get 9% on Rotten Tomatoes, which means people are just shitting on it. But then you see 77% of Google users liked this movie.
The fuck does that mean?
And I feel like it's one of those things that you can look at and just be like, well, this movie's probably going to be shit, but it's going to be fucking fun.
It is a lot of fun. And is it good acting? Fuck no.
Absolutely not.
Is it good directing? Fuck no. Is it good writing? Fuck no. There's no part of this movie I can tell you why I like it other than the vibes.
The vibes are good.
Like, it puts out the vibes.
If you like partying and taking shots, I feel like this could easily have a drinking game attached to it with the main character alone.
You know when the best actor in the fucking movie is Roy from The Office, you're not in for a good movie. You're not in. It's this. Oh my God, this movie had fucking absolutely nothing going for it. Like, so it's a remake, obviously, of this great kind of suspense thriller from the 70s called When a Stranger Calls. Now, When a Stranger Calls, the first 10 minutes of the movie, this girl is babysitting these kids. She starts getting these weird phone calls. And she figures out, he keeps saying, have you checked the children? Have you checked the children? She finds out the call's coming from inside the house, ripping off Black Christmas a little bit there. But, you get the call is coming from inside the house type thing. She goes up, finds that the kids are dead. The rest of the movie is her and the cops trying to find who killed, who this killer is. Mm-hmm. That's the first 10 minutes of that movie.
Which
they
is
made
rated
that the
R
whole
as
fucking
well.
They made it that the whole fucking movie.
Right.
You can't just take 10 minutes of a good movie and make it a whole fucking movie. That right there tells you is like once I got in, realized like, oh no. Oh, this is the movie. I was like, fuck me, this is bad.
Right.
And you don't ever see the fucking killer. He doesn't kill the kids. Like all the shit that was good about those first 10 minutes, they don't even fucking do it.
Yeah, it's just a lot of weird dialogue. Nothing that she says is believable to me.
Oh, Camilla Bell. Fuck Camilla Bell. Thank goodness she didn't keep doing horror movies because she's one of the few actresses who was god-awful, realized she was god-awful. She's like, this ain't for me, and got off the bus. There are some that we see stick with it, and they really fucking shouldn't. But thank you, Camilla Bell, for doing us all a service and not ever doing another fucking horror movie again, at least one that I've seen. So, yeah, kudos. You're a fucking hero of Horrorzoid for not doing more horror movies. That was shit. Now, another reason, before we fucking finish this episode, I gotta say, another reason why this episode, or not this episode, another reason why this movie is shit, and you should know it going into it, is the director is Simon West. And I remember, like, why does that fucking name ring a bell to me? And I remember, he's the guy who directed fucking Con Air.
Which goes to show you, again, that even when a stranger calls us shit, it is so fucking fun to watch.
That's it. I mean, that's it. Because it's like,
that's what Con Air is. No one can say Con Air is a good movie and, like, really mean it's, like, a good movie.
You can't mean...
But it's a good movie.
Right. That's the thing. It's like, why? Because of the vibes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like...
his hair blowing in the wind alone is fucking
the
perfection.
fucking Leanne Rimes song at the end of it. That's what that's what would have helped When a Stranger Calls. You needed a good song at the end of it, and they didn't have it.
They didn't. They needed a good solid soundtrack that everyone wanted to go buy.
You know what? If they would have flipped it and Tessa Thompson was like the lead actress instead of just the best friend for 5 minutes,
right?
Maybe this movie would have had a chance of not being shit. Because Camilla Bell, again, pure garbage.
But you suck, and Tessa Thompson would have probably saved that movie.
Tessa Thompson probably would have saved that movie. I don't know. It's a pretty shit movie, though.
It is rough.
It's fucking rough.
Go watch it for yourself.
Go watch it. See if
you're part of the 77% of Google users, or if you're part of the
9% on Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah. Are you going to be part of the 9% not having fun? Or are you going to be part of the 77% Google users like us who are like, this is shit, but we love shit?
We do.
So that is our episode on PG-13 horror, guys. Again, there's a high chance that Megan is still going to be the amazing movie that we think it can be. And even if it isn't, it's probably still going to be a lot of fun.
Right.
But there is a small chance it will be bad. There's a small chance that we could get a fucking When a Stranger Calls.
But it'll be campy as fuck.
But it's going to be fucking fun. You know it is. You know it is. Also to the people out there saying it's like, oh, it's a ripoff of Chucky. Fuck you. It's like... There can be other killer doll movies.
I would say we've had other killer dolls. We've had plenty of killer robots. It's together.
Yeah, yes. Now,
it is what it is.
Now, if you want to cross over and do a Chucky Megan crossover, I'm up for that. I'm already like, I'm ready to
Chucky
merge
versus
those.
Megan?
Chucky versus Megan.
Let's fucking do
Chucky versus M3gan. This is going to be the showdown that we deserve as horror fans.
Absolutely.
So yes, guys, this has been a fun episode. As you can see, we've enjoyed ourselves. But without further ado, we will leave you with this.
It's not the house that's haunted.
It's your son. Thank you for listening. Be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. New episodes drop every weekend. Follow us on TikTok at HorrorZoidPod and send emails to horrorzoidpod@gmail.com with your thoughts, questions, and stories for us to read on a future episode. To all our Zoids out there, stay scary.